Well, Japan is imposing a series of new social restrictions amid a recent surge of cases of coronavirus there. It's also urging citizens not to travel to 73 countries and regions. That's a third of the world. It's expected to close its borders to people coming from the United States, Canada, China, South Korea, and most of Europe. The number of infections has now crossed 2,000 and 59 people have died. The economy minister says the government's containment strategy is now stretched to the limit. Well, let's speak to Nancy Snow. She's a professor of public diplomacy at Kyoto University of Foreign Studies, and she joins us now on Skype from New York. Nancy, I want to start by asking you about the timing of this, both these further restrictions that we're seeing and also the spike in numbers. I mean, it comes hot on the heels of the postponement of the Olympics, and I know there's now been some speculation about just how transparent the government has been so far.
Yeah, I think it's been quite concerning to the outside world looking at Japan, that Japan has played this out as if it's some type of exception to the rule. And just 2 weeks ago, the Tokyo Metropolitan Governor, Koike, was saying there was not a chance that the Olympics would be canceled. That was a loss of time that Japan needed. 2 weekends ago, people were out under the cherry blossoms, and they were in mass gatherings in the Nakameguro section of Tokyo, where the blossoms were in full bloom. And unfortunately, that probably led to a lot of silent infection, contact infection. So we won't know until this coming weekend to see if Japan has been this exception, but I doubt it. And I'm sorry to say that, but we're hearing reports from Italy and Spain, and then Japan could be next, especially in Tokyo. I think they lost precious time by focusing on whether or not they were going to hold the Olympics.
Nancy, I recall that the government faced a lot of criticism in its handling of the Fukushima disaster. And looking back to mid-February, I see more than half the people surveyed were not happy with how Abe has been managing this situation. So what's the feeling there now?
Well, the feeling was that public opinion, which has really become the superpower of the world, especially with this pandemic, put pressure on the Abe government. The Japanese people overwhelmingly supported cancellation of the Olympics. And I think with that added pressure coming from within the country, that made the difference. Abe has certainly paid attention to his polling numbers, and he finally was using language of concern just this past weekend, as was Koike, who held an emergency press conference Monday night. But again, they're very late to react, and the public, the behavior may not be at its best in terms of social distancing, but the feeling was that Japan needed to act much sooner than it did.
And speaking of when it chose to act, what do people there make of the government's handling of the Diamond Princess, that cruise ship with so many sick people on board?
Well, as I wrote in the Nikkei Asian Review back in February, it was poorly handled. And at that time, the government had really failed its communications around the Diamond Princess. The problem was that Japan was viewing the Diamond Princess as not having anything to do with the country. And there was a lot of complaint about how the numbers were being conflated with the very low numbers of infections of coronavirus within Japan proper. But we know that this virus is not beholden to any nationality. It doesn't discriminate. So indeed, there was likely infection transmitting from the Diamond Princess. And I was even wondering why Abe didn't show a little bit more compassion. This is a country known for its compassion, known for being an international aid leader, and also for handling natural disasters so well. So we expect more from Japan, and I hope that they won't have huge numbers and a big explosion in numbers of infections, but it could very well happen.
Nancy Snow there, Professor of Public Diplomacy at the Kyoto University of Foreign Studies. Thank you for your insights on Al Jazeera, Nancy.